Over there. In the window.
Yeah.
Got it? There's one down there, Joe, if you want them. You sure? Okay. This is Joe, right? I'm Bob.
No, it's okay.
I'm sure it'll be placed. It'll place here and there for a couple of months or so. For the most part, yeah.
Well, we think downstairs, grease and stuff. No. We should have them this week, yeah.
There's one down there.
I'll call the meeting to order. I'll call it to order. This meeting is called to order. I'll run through the roll call. We'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah, we will. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
We have a flag in the room. Yep, right behind you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Bob Yoder here. Ron Kerwood.
Here.
Terry Sachs.
Here.
Paul Maxey.
Here.
Tom Manning.
Here.
Kevin Tobias.
Here.
Damian Brewster.
Here.
Carol Schuler.
Here.
Special guest, Roger Phillips.
Here.
Mr. Phillips is our sewer engineer from Gannett Fleming, Corporation Gannett Fleming. Kevin, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay. We need a motion for the approval of the October 31st, 2017 minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I do not have any correspondence, and I have no administrative actions to take place. Just open the floor.
Do you wanna do public comments now,
Sure.
or do you wanna have
I
comments?
do want to note too, I do need to have a short, very short executive session too. I don't know if you want to do that now, or probably just we'll do that after the meeting.
Yeah, let's have an executive session immediately following this meeting. If we wanna have public comment on anything that we are going to, move on,
Okay.
other than that, let's hold off.
I do have a public comment on one of the items on the agenda.
Okay.
It would deal with the component 4A.
I'm sorry, your name, Linda?
I'm sorry, my name is Linda Jansen, Simmons Road, Zieglersville, Carciominville.
Okay.
And I was in attendance at the planning commission meeting that was just held when it was first introduced. And everything seemed fine and copacetic with it, except for question number 6, which dealt with historical resources on the Ragusa track. The
Okay,
advice.
I gotta interrupt you here, excuse me a second. Now, that's not on this agenda, and that's a public comment I'm not sure.
Does say that it was on the planning module for the Ragusa track is on the agenda for tonight, at least what was posted.
Let's talk about, this is what I'd like to do. Instead of getting too scattered with our public comments, they're gonna be short. They're gonna be like a 2-minute public comment. We cannot have a constant discussion about repeating things that we've gone over. We had discussion on that. I believe that was addressed and answered.
It was not.
Well, then, what I would suggest is you were gonna bring this up, right? You have this in, okay, let's hold off any public comment that's specific to something that's on the agenda. Okay, if we're gonna pass a resolution or something, we can have a public comment at that point in time.
Okay.
So anybody can influence that decision if they'd like to. But it's gotta be a short, little 2-minute.
Sure. I have all the
Persuasive
pertinent
speech or
information that
whatever.
was omitted from that presentation.
Okay, so let's just try to do that so we can try to stay on track here. We have a lot on the agenda tonight that we want to try to get through. So I guess what I'm gonna do, Kevin, turn it back to you, which sends us either to reports or to the solicitor. And,
You want to comment on what you have, Damien?
Sure. So the first item on the agenda for me is to request authorization to advertise ordinance 2017-04 that would enact a tax credit for volunteer firefighters and emergency personnel. There's 2 components to that. One would be, at least in the draft that we prepared, it would be a $1,000 credit towards the earned income tax liability, and then it's a 20% credit towards the local real estate taxes. So if anyone has any questions or comments.
I have a question. What would be the impact on the income on our budget for that?
I didn't do that analysis, but I think,
I mean, how many people does it involve? You could do it. I'm just wondering
Do
if
you have any idea
that,
on it?
well, we take that into account on the budget, on the income
It
side.
wasn't taken into account on the budget at this point, no. The impact will be very small. And it's unknown at this point because they have to meet certain criteria. They have to answer so many calls, they have to be available for calls, so we won't know just yet. But offhand, my estimation would be less than $10,000.
Okay, just, again, a comment would be, and probably for Kevin, when you're updating the budget, maybe put that $10,000 in there as an offset.
The reason I didn't do an
Because it will-
analysis, because I wasn't sure if they were gonna authorize, it has to be advertised first.
Okay.
And then, once the authorization is given advertised, I'm sure the question's gonna come up at the next meeting, and then I'll be able to, I'll work with Bonnie and Lorraine and have as the earned income tax, it's not a true exact number because you don't know what you're gonna get until the end of the year, but I could probably come up with a good estimate.
The $10,000 is probably a good round number.
It's
As
probably
far as
high,
that
quite
goes.
frankly. Hatfield Township has it, and they have a much bigger fire department, and their total was under 20.
Okay.
so let's move forward here. All we're doing is authorizing advertisement, so discussion can occur at a later date. So I move to authorize advertisement ordinance 2017-04, enacting the tax credit for the fire department. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
okay, the next item is proposed resolution that would impose some regulations regarding the use of recording devices during township meetings. That was an issue that our office researched because there's been some issues that have come up with people objecting to video recording at the meetings and other people wanting to do it. The law basically says that people are allowed to do it, but the local government is allowed to impose reasonable restrictions. And our office, and one of the issues that came up was some people may not have even been aware that they were being recorded. And so our office drafted a resolution for the board to consider that basically establishes some procedures for people who want to record the meetings to sign in on a log, and then for the township manager to announce to the public or anybody who's there that somebody has indicated they're planning on recording the meeting. And a few other things, that the recording device shouldn't make any noise that's gonna interfere with the meeting, and that it shouldn't be producing any, shouldn't be set up in a place where it's gonna block anybody's view of the meeting, stuff like that. So, it's it's part of the agenda tonight, and it's ready for you to consider if you want. I suppose, is that an issue you want to allow the public to comment on?
So this is, we're ready, if we choose to, we can move on this and pass this.
That's correct.
So,
I'm
so
sorry.
yes, I would say that, I read through it. I think it's fairly benign. It sets up some basic guidelines and maybe keeps people understanding what their role might be in moving forward with this. So I'm in favor of it. So, I'll move to pass a resolution, and I'll call for a second, if I can get one.
I have.
Is it, excuse me, when
Hold on
is
one
the
second,
public
please.
comment?
Hold on a second. Hold on.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, there's a second here, so I'll open it up now to public comment. Again, keep your comments brief. Name and address?
Warren Jacobs, 252A, Fulmer Road. What is the purpose of having somebody sign in to be able to record things when you're allowed to do it anyway? What do we gain from having somebody sign in?
Is that a
Oh,
comment?
sure, I'll address it
Go ahead.
if that's all right. One of the purposes is that it makes the township manager aware that somebody is planning to do it, so he can then announce it to the public.
But then it would be illegal for somebody in the audience to whip out their cell phone and start recording? If something just came up in a meeting, they felt like doing that?
Well, it would be in violation of this resolution as written, yes.
I'm
And
sorry,
that resolution then comes in conflict with the Sunshine Act, or not?
This resolution was drafted with the intention of complying with the Sunshine Act. So the Sunshine Act specifically says that local governments can pass reasonable restrictions on these recording devices. They can't be prohibited, but there can be reasonable restrictions on them. So that it's, in my opinion, complies with the Sunshine Act in all ways.
Ground rules, basically.
Exactly.
Some basic ground rules.
Just like everyone has a right to attend public hearings, that doesn't mean you have the right to attend and act however you want to, if you understand what I mean. So similar to the restrictions that any local government could pass to maintain order at a public meeting.
Phil Smith, Gerloff Road. I just think in all fairness, I think it ought to be read exactly what those ground rules are, so we're sort of not just taking a, that they're prudent and
Sure.
justifiable.
No,
without-
yeah, I'm happy
Read it
to.
before we vote.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
yeah, so what happens if I want to put a picture on my blog of people at the meeting and I take out my camera and take a picture? Do I then have to register, and if I don't, am I going to be in violation? I mean, how are you going to actually enforce this?
I wouldn't,
I mean, where's the line between doing this and, everyone has a cell phone in the audience, and people use their cell phones all day long for all kinds of things, so how,
yep.
the police gonna come to people's door because I took a picture of myself, I mean, how is it gonna work?
Yeah, so to answer your question, I don't know that a photograph would be considered a recording. I think it refers to video recording and audio recording.
Wouldn't you
You
have to
can do it
notify the
yourself.
person that you were getting being taken a picture of?
But it's a public meeting,
You're correct.
and anyone who comes to a public meeting comes with the understanding that they can have their picture taken or being recorded.
I'm not going to disagree with you from a strictly legal perspective that some people might assume that, but I know for a fact that not everybody does. In fact, it's my understanding we had a lawyer who was here at the last meeting representing a developer, and they were not expecting to be recorded and they objected to it. So I don't know that everybody has the same awareness that you might have that they should expect to be videotaped at a
Well, I'm pretty confident as a lawyer, she knew what the law was, she just didn't like it.
I can't comment on that because I wasn't here, but I can tell you for sure that not everybody has that expectation. Yes, sir.
Paul Johnson, 317 Main Street. Wouldn't it be simpler just to announce at the beginning of each meeting that recording is permissible and that it needs to follow the guidelines set down by the township of non-interference and no noise?
Yes and no. I mean, one of the other, I think, concerns that was in mind when these were drafted, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't recreate the wheel. I found a similar list of restrictions that some other municipality imposed, and that was in large part what I based this on when I was drafting it. But certainly one concern that some people might have, no matter who they are, is that a person could videotape a public meeting and then edit that videotape to change and misconstrue what somebody said or did. Probably applies more to what they may say. So having a log where people register the fact that they're intending to record it will offer some protections if a person was later on, for instance, putting online a video that misrepresented what was said. And you know how that works. I mean, you can cut out portions of somebody's sentence and take it out of context and make it look like a person said something they didn't say. So that was one of the, I think, wow, okay. Yes.
Larry Cohen, Mine Hill Road. Since you brought up the issue of the Sunshine Act, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, you are aware, of course, that violations of the Sunshine Act are personal liabilities and not liabilities of the township, correct?
What does that have to do with this issue?
It's the Sunshine Act. You raised the Sunshine Act.
I know, but we're specifically taking public comment, not question right now on this proposed
Okay, I'll make it
resolution.
into a comment.
Great.
My comment is that any violations of the Sunshine Act are a personal liability, not a township liability. That's the end of my comment.
Yes, sir.
Would it be helpful if the township does the recording?
Well,
I mean,
that's
like
another
Warrington
issue.
and-
That's another issue, right?
Well, I'm just saying,
Any
that way you don't
comments
have.
On this, if you'd like, I'll read it.
I
I'm
have
not
one- I have-
necessarily,
I
I'm
have
not
one more
necessarily
comment.
sold on it, okay? I just moved on it to move it forward, to have a discussion. And,
We have some more comments.
I can read it. It really is not meant to stop anybody from recording anything. It has no intention of doing that. It's just some basic ground rules that are out there. Go ahead.
I think it should be clear, and maybe the resolution should add this, is that a recording or any other document or picture of the meeting is not considered official record. The only official record of the meeting are the approved minutes.
It's in there.
That's in here.
So even if someone did that, it would not hold up in a court of law because it's not considered an official record. So that's an interesting example, but it could not be used against anybody because it's not considered official. So maybe people aren't aware of that either, is letting people know in the meeting it's not an official record.
Shall I read this? Would it help? If you want
Yeah,
to read it?
yes, it might answer a lot of questions before we get to questions.
Maybe you should read it.
All right. Resolution 2017 dash, I don't know that it's been assigned a number yet. Okay. Resolution adopting rules and regulations for the use of recording devices at public meetings of the Board of Supervisors. Whereas the Sunshine Act provides that agencies may adopt and enforce reasonable rules and regulations regarding the use of recording devices to record agency proceedings. And whereas the Board of Supervisors wishes to adopt and enforce reasonable rules and regulations regarding the use of recording devices during public meetings of the Board of Supervisors to promote efficient meetings and maintain order. Now therefore, they have resolved as follows, and I'm skipping by the Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors to try to move this along. At least 15 minutes prior to the commencement of each public meeting of the Board of Supervisors, the township manager shall place a recording log in a conspicuous location in the meeting room accessible to the public. Persons seeking to make audio and/or video recordings of public meetings of the Board of Supervisors shall, prior to the commencement of the meeting, write on the recording log their name, legal name, address, and the type of recording, audio or video, which they seek to make. After roll call and the Pledge of Allegiance, the township manager shall announce the name of each person listed on the recording log and the type of device, audio or video, being used. Recording devices shall be placed prior to the commencement of each meeting in a location of the room which will not obstruct the view of any person present or otherwise physically interfere with proceedings. Once placed, recording devices shall not be moved or removed until after the adjournment of the proceedings or during a recess in the proceedings. No recording device shall produce a distracting sound so as to divert attention from the proceedings. No recording shall be played back during a public meeting. It shall be made clear on the recording itself that it does not constitute an official recording of the meeting, and no action shall be taken by the person responsible for the recording, which might lead the public to believe that the recording is to be considered an official record of the meeting. Non-compliance with any of the above rules and regulations shall be grounds for any or all of the following: A, the immediate cessation of the recording, confiscation of the recording to be held by the township manager until such time as any dispute concerning same can be resolved. Removal from the meeting and/or forfeiture of the opportunity to, and I see an error that I made, clerical, I put forfeiture of the opportunity to videotape future meetings, that really should say record, because this applies to both types of recordings. Resolved and approved this blank day of blank 2017.
I will step out and say, since Mr. Burns here has been recording, I would say you've been following the rules to a T without even knowing what the rules are.
Thank
I
God.
don't think we have
I was getting ready to put my hands out.
So, it really is a benign thing, and all it really is moving forward, if you can envision a half a dozen people setting themselves up, playing back, it's really a preventative thing. Again, I'm not completely sold on it, and I don't think we have a problem now. I don't know, I sense objection, and I'm not sure why, really. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, so.
Yeah, I mean, my thought was for somebody to identify themselves is the same as what anybody does if they're making a public comment, so I didn't see that as a huge deal.
It would seem to me to be consistent with our normal procedure.
And it gives notice to people in the audience and participants that it is being recorded. Some people had expressed concern about that. People on some of our boards and some people in the audiences. They'd like to know, right to know. So, with that, without objection.
I have one more question. How are you gonna enforce cell phones? Because everyone in that audience has a cell phone and they can just turn it on and.
I don't know that we can, but by the same token, am I wrong, in Pennsylvania, you cannot record someone without their knowledge?
In general, yes. I think there's exceptions to that if you're in a public place. So,
In the police?
yeah, so if it's,
Record the police.
right, yeah. So if it's a public place, then I think you're allowed to do it. You can't record private conversations.
Yeah, the flavor of this to me is more like what we're doing here is kind of legitimizing it, basically. Someone whoops out a cell phone and takes a picture or whatever. I don't think there's any way to, I don't know that there's any need to control that, and this isn't, I shouldn't say control, it's not a matter of controlling, it's just so we know the player. Just like if you make a comment, you state your name, and, I mean, this could be people from out of the township. I mean, the news media can take videos, we're not gonna object to that, and they do. But I think this is the first time I've seen it, but I think it does comply with or stick with our normal rules of procedure and so forth. So I might be in favor of it.
I have one comment.
Yes.
Linda Jansen, Simmons Road. My understanding of the Sunshine Act is, it sounds like everything that Damien just read is compliant and acceptable. There was just only one last little stipulation when you said about the penalties and the violations. Under section 710 of Title 65, it indicates either reasonable conditions or rules that you can put in place.